Welcome to They Live by Film, a platform dedicated to bringing you film discussion and interviews from around the world. I'm Adam Lundy, and I'm joined as always by my co-hosts Chris Haskell and Zach Bryant. Hello, gentlemen. How's it going?
Hello, hello.
Buongiorno.
Howdy, howdy. How are we all doing today?
Doing so good. I've just seen so many movies that have rats in them as either the main plot or ancillary plot. I can't wait to talk about today's films. How are y'all doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Sunday, so can't complain. And I'm off tomorrow, so I have a nice long weekend ahead of me. So that's nice. I can't complain too much.
You have a bank holiday coming up?
No, I just booked Monday off because I was on like a temporary role for the last 10 months in work and I'm going back to my old role next week.
Oh
So I
yeah.
was like, screw that, I'm not doing Monday. So I just took Monday off as like annual leave and pay time off, and then I'll just go back and start again on Tuesday.
So last time, well, I don't know about specifically last time, but one of the recent times you had some time off, you wanted to dedicate it to watching a long movie. You have any long movies teed up?
No, not
No,
at
okay,
all.
not this time.
Not this time. I did used to do that quite a bit. Whenever I had a day off, that knee was still working, so it was just going to be me trying to fill my day.
hmm
I would usually use that to tackle a longer movie, but never know. I might change my mind. I don't have any plans tomorrow at all, except to go to the gym at some point. So I'm sure I can fit something in if I wanted to. On that note, has anyone seen anything or want to give a shout out to anything that we've watched? Obviously, we're doing this a little bit different. We recorded the last episode literally a week ago, so it's only been a week since we last spoke. But anything else, that's come up in the meantime that you want to give a shout out to?
I have between the 9th and the 10th, we're recording on the 11th. So on Friday and Saturday, I was off. I watched 10 movies. So I will quickly go through what those 10 movies are. So I rewatched Wonder Woman 1984, which is Chris's favorite movie. I liked it better second time around. I thought it was okay the first time, but I really did enjoy it the second time around a little bit more. I should have watched Into the Spider-Verse because the next film I watched was Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which was good. It was very good. Maybe not number one film according to Letterboxd good, but it was a good time. I like the first one a little bit better because it has Nick Cage in it and this one doesn't.
Wait, sorry. Is this now the number one movie on Letterboxd?
It is, yeah. It passed Come and See. I'm sure it'll mellow out as time goes on. Yeah.
It's only been out for like a week, so it's just gonna happen. I don't know why there's so many people up in arms about it. It just makes no sense to me. This is just it's like it's like on IMDb. This happens when a film comes out on a limited release. It'll end up on like a 9.7, and everyone loses their minds. And then once it gets a wider release and more people have seen it, it'll go to like whatever it's supposed to be.
Sure.
Yeah, people.
Yeah, I just find it more funny than anything because like when it happened, I was like, yeah, that's kind of the one I expected on Letterboxd to get up real high. So because I think the first one's like number 17 on Letterboxd, so it'll probably settle somewhere around there, maybe a little bit higher would be my expectations. But yeah, it's good. I really enjoyed it. I watched a new horror movie on Shudder called Brooklyn 45, which is essentially all these people get stuck in this room after a seance, and then there's this German woman. It takes place in like right after World War II, so it's not subtle at all. But it's like a little bottle thing. We kind of did episodes of that recently. Watched The Boogeyman in theaters. It was okay. Dashcam was better. I was kind of expecting a little bit more from that director, since he does kind of some absurd things, and that one was just kind of a bit generic. Finally got around to Cocaine Bear. I got a bear doing cocaine on a bloodbath, so I got what I paid for. I was pretty happy with that one. Rewatched Sin City. Sin City's still great. Probably still one of the better comic book movies. I would put in like pretty high tier. It's pretty great. It's aged really well. Watched Man on Fire because I've not watched that many Tony Scott films. I haven't seen this since I was like a kid. Still depressing, still really good. Really 2000s though. Like you have like the over editing of everything. But good. I rewatched Raiders of the Lost Ark. Not much I can say about that. Watched Crank. Crank was good. It was what I expected. Some dude just having to get adrenaline to stay alive. And then I watched these two films that we're going to talk about today. So that was my binge for the last 2 days.
That's awesome. What did you have a favorite?
Probably Sin City. Yeah. Even though that was a rewatch.
Forgive me if I sound like a perv here for what I'm about to say, but that movie, I already kind of had a crush on Jessica Alba before that movie, and that movie cemented my crush for her. I'll keep it at that level.
I mean, that's understandable. I apologize that my favorite wasn't Night of the Zombies, though. I apologize.
Oh, I can forgive bad taste. That's why we're here.
What about you guys?
What did y'all watch? Watching. Well, I thought I was cool watching 2 movies in one day yesterday, and then you just destroyed that. So, yeah.
Do you guys ever look on your stat page? They show now that you can see how many times you've watched 2+ movies a day.
Oh, okay.
Wow. That's kind of depressing.
I'm sure if I go back to COVID times, it'll be super high, but not much these days. During COVID, I was definitely watching at least 2 a day, if not 3 a day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The 2 I watched yesterday, I finally watched a new Ant-Man movie. It's pretty low to mid-tier Marvel. It's ugly as hell. The CGI in some parts of it are just awful, terrible. But I thought the story was okay. The concept was okay. Overall, I gave it 3.5 stars or something, pretty sort of low to mid-tier Marvel. And then I rewatched Scream 6 because I hadn't seen it since it came out in the theater, and Neve hadn't seen it because I went to see it on my own. So I was like, hey, we'll just watch Scream 6, and it was good because all Scream movies are at least good. So
I can't remember. Did you like it better than 5?
No, I definitely like 5 better. I love 5.
Okay,
5's my
the other way
favorite.
around. I like 6 better.
Yeah, I get it. 6 has that grittiness, has that sort of subversion to even Scream's tropes. So I definitely get why people like 6 a lot. I just really love 5. I don't know why. I just love 5 a lot. It's probably my second favorite, along with 2. And then just away from the kind of stuff that I watched this week, we had new Radiance Films announcements. I know we just did an episode dedicated to Radiance Films, who retweeted me. So thank you, Radiance and Fran, if you happen to be listening. Thank you for retweeting me. That was nice. There's two new films that are coming out in September on my birthday. They are coming out. The first one is a film I hadn't really heard of. It's a newer film from Spain called The Dead Mother. Don't really know anything about it. Can't say I'd heard of it before, but the concept sounds interesting. But what I am much more excited for is the other film that's coming out called Scream and Scream Again, which was a horror film from Britain. I believe it came out in 1970. It was basically came out to try and sort of rival with Hammer. So they basically stole 2 of Hammer's biggest stars, in Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, and paired them up with the king of campy horror, Vincent Price, and sort of made this kind of sci-fi horror film. That Gene Siskel said that he said the film was daring him to put it on his worst film of the year list when it came out. So that only sounds positive to me. So I can't wait. Yeah, I can't wait to pick that up. But it's going to be an instant pre-order for me when I get paid. So
I'm trying to remember. Siskel was probably, between him and Ebert, was probably the more critical of genre films, right? Between the two,
definitely.
There,
yeah.
Oh, Ebert loved genre stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, Ebert. I was reading some stuff about this, and I'll get the exact quote that Ebert said about it, because I thought it just kind of summed him up, because he only gave it 2 stars, but he said what he wrote about it kind of made sense. He gave it 2 out of 4, calling it ridiculous yet impossible to dislike because they only ask that you share their sense of the absurd. So, you got to respect that. He's like, yeah, fuck it was a bad film, but I had fun watching it because it's just so stupid.
Well, I shared one of his reviews to Chris about Anaconda, because he gave that 3.5 out of 4. And I always liked the way he just pretty much said, look, it promised me a giant snake movie. Like, what else am I going to ask for?
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
it's like it gave it to me.
Exactly.
Yeah, gotta respect it.
There's two I want to talk about quickly before we jump in, because I'm so geeked out by these. So one of them, have y'all seen, did y'all all get a chance to see The Gleaners and I, or Gleaners and I?
Yeah, I watched it when fairly shortly after the Sight and Sound list dropped, because it's on
That's
that.
right.
And I watched it fairly shortly after that. So I didn't watch it recently when we had it in the film club, but I had seen it within like the last year, whenever the Sight and Sound list came out.
Okay. Dak, did you get a chance to see it this week?
No, you can sell it to me though. Tell me why I should watch it.
No. I just think, like, do you remember in like early 2000s there was all these like Michael Moore documentaries coming out, and like kind of Save the Planet documentaries coming out?
Yeah.
And they were like, some of them were good, some of them were not, like very far removed from nonfiction. um and the thing I love so much about this is like she starts off by just telling like different stories that aren't even necessarily connected, other than just through the kind of general theme of people that live off of the excess that we create through farming, right? So like it'll show like an apple orchard, and then it'll show people going through, and they have a rule where if they wait 10 minutes after the giant like machine goes by that picks all the apples, then they can legally go behind and like pick apples for themselves. And some people leave with like 70 pounds of apples. It's crazy, right? But they have all these rules set up in France to basically allow people to glean off of businesses, like farming businesses. And so they do it for like vegetation, fruit. They do it for seafood. There's a lot of, I guess, apparently there's a lot of waste in seafood as well. And so what winds up happening is like the movie kind of transitions from being an interesting story about these people that have found a way to eat for free, to then becoming kind of like a movie about the excess of the like food supply chain, I guess. But it's just told in a very Varda way, so it's like light and fun and interesting, and like you get to see her personality, and she's so empathetic to these folks that people don't really ever see or talk about. It's just lovely, and you wind up, I wound up caring about the food supply chain, which I wouldn't say I generally think about or care much about, just by the way she tells the story. So it's very good. And on the completely opposite end of the spectrum, have you all ever seen this French movie called The Wild Boys? It's like maybe 6 years old now.
I feel like I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
Wow. Like, I was glued to the TV. This movie is crazy. Like, the director's called Bertrand Mandico. And it's a fable. I mean, it feels like a fable, right? Like it's this story of these 4 or 5 young boys that sexually assault their teacher. I wouldn't say that scene is necessarily overly violent, but it definitely sets the tone of the movie, because there's like a lot of jizz just like flying around, almost like a done in a way of like a celebration of life. It's like shooting, this like stream is like, shooting across the screen. And then they get called to court, and they lie about what happened and say that she got them drunk, and they were just like responding to her advances and all this stuff. And they get sent away on this sort of prison type thing with a sea captain who winds up taking to them an island, where in this particular island, the plants, there's like a phallic plant that shoots a white liquid that they use to drink. And there's a fruit that looks like a hairy testicle, and they can open it up and eat, and that's what they eat. And then there's a plant that's shaped like a vulva that they can pleasure themselves with. And then throughout the movie, because they're living on this island, they like transition to women. and, and like, it's a crazy like surrealism, very energetic, very visual movie that's also kind of hypersexualized, but it's awesome. Like I loved it.
Oh, it's the After Blue dude. Okay. I'm looking it up now. Yeah. I've never seen it, but I know who you're talking about. So all that makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah. I don't know too much about After Blue. Is that is it a controversial film?
I don't know. I don't know if it was popular enough to ever be like controversial. It's on
Okay.
Shudder, if you have that. So I mean, you can always check it out, but it's weird. It's strange. That's the only way. It's like it's that type of thing. Like I don't know how to describe it beyond that.
Yeah. Anyways, I don't know that I would like recommend people run to see Wild Boys, but it's for people like me that enjoy surrealism and love kind of more extreme stuff. I think this is a must see. But I'll stop there and I'll just say that as far as collecting, I got the Halfway to Black Friday from Vinegar Syndrome in, so I can add 22 new movies to my collection now.
I don't. Well, you know what? I was about to say I wish I could do that, but actually, thanks to Chris here, I was able to add 24 movies to mine because he was nice enough to sell me his Ford at Fox set, which is great. Is a massive set.
It's so heavy.
Like
That
I
coffee,
can't
have you
think there's
opened?
a Blu-ray box set that even comes close to that weight.
No, you don't really need. This is what always blew me away. Like the size of a DVD and the size of a Blu-ray are the same, right?
Mhm.
In terms of like the space they occupy inside the tray.
Correct.
But like for some reason, everything. I think it's just because you can store more on a Blu-ray, so you just generally need like less discs to do whatever you're gonna do. But the sets that come out, like think about these sets from Severin or Indicator, where there's 14 movies and it only takes up like the width of 4 discs.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's, and I mean, I get it. Something like this Ford at Fox, it's really cumbersome to put anywhere. Like I
Yeah,
haven't figured out where I'm going to put it yet.
yeah, that's the
So,
problem.
I'm sure that was part of the reason too. But I like big box sets. I mean, this thing comes with like posters and everything else. So I was like, that's really cool.
Yeah. Have you seen the coffee table book that comes with it?
Yeah. I looked through it a little bit. I haven't like dug deep, but yeah. And then my girlfriend, because I hadn't pulled out the posters yet, I just saw they were there. She started looking through them, and there's like a documentary underneath them and everything. So it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah, no, it's very thorough. Yeah,
It
I
sounds
kind of
like
wish I,
the Bergman Cinema set. That's hefty.
That's probably the closest like I could think of for Blu-ray.
imagine if that Bergman set was about 3 inches taller and
Oh
about
Jesus.
2 to 3 inches taller and about
And it's a
double.
square. So keep in mind, if it's taller
Yeah,
that way, it's wider too.
exactly. Yeah, it's a square. That's a bit.
Oh,
That's a
okay,
bit.
that's blowing my mind because that set is massive. You know, the Bergman one is chunky and it's heavy because it has the coffee table book as well.
I have
I
a
think.
cat who is like 18 pounds, and this set is heavier. So I just like picking it up, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, I would say that Bergman set. I would be surprised if there's a set that comes out that's better than that ever for Blu-ray.
One day I will pick it up.
Yeah.
One sale, I will finally say, yes, I have $100.
Yeah, I mean that's the problem. It's just I guess that if whenever they finally get around and do their Kurosawa set, maybe that'll beat it. But
And your
like
poor did you oh, I know this is off topic and I apologize. I'll keep it quick. Did you end up selling your Kurosawa set?
I haven't yet. I keep going back and forth on it. It's probably the right time to do it though, because I would
I mean, if they
probably only.
announce it, that value plummets
Yeah,
hard.
that's the thing. And like, am I really gonna watch Sanshiro Sugata twice again before I, eventually double dip for the Blu-ray? Probably not. So like, yeah, I think I'll probably just do it, and I'll probably put it around 500 or 600 bucks on eBay.
Yeah,
And
and
so
I
that
mean,
that's
I had that Halloween 15 disc set from Scream Factory, and they never did a 1-for-1 with the 4Ks, but everything but the Rob Zombie ones got a 4K release. So that thing went from like, I saw it upwards of selling for $800, if not even a little bit more, and now you can buy them for like $200. Like it plummeted hard once, probably about the time the fifth or sixth one came. I think it was the time 1 through 5 came out. That's when they
Yeah.
started plummeting hard because everybody knew 6 through 8 was at least going to come. And they
Sure.
did. So everybody was waiting. It's like, well, we might as well sell them now because once 6 through 8's here, the set's pretty much worthless. So now the
Yeah.
only Halloween movies that don't have 4K are the 2 Halloween films, two Rob Zombie Halloween films.
Interesting.
So they will drop once it's announced.
I probably should do it. I mean, the only thing that's on my kind of grail list right now, have y'all seen that Eric Romer set from France that was put out?
I have not.
Beautiful
No.
set. It's sort of like one of those ones where it's very simple, possibly even like stencil, colored pencil type design around, like kind of wrapping the box, and then it sits on the side, and it has those really thin paper sleeves with the discs in them. You know what I'm talking about? Like it's not like a disc that snaps shut. It just sort of closes. It's like a thick paper that just sort of closes with like a thin plastic sort of case holding the disc. And so it's very sleek and elegant and really pretty. But right now, the cheapest one I can find is for $800. So I just won't buy it.
Speaking of elegant, let's talk about some films that are not elegant.
Yes.
Let's go through that.
Yeah, so we did something a little bit different this week. Chris is going to give you more information, but before we talk about the films, we decided to actually go and get an expert's opinion. So, Chris, do you want to give like the listeners a quick intro to what they're going to hear for the next little while?
Yeah, thank you. So I figured, much like the films of Fellini, much like the films of Bergman, much like the films of Kurosawa, we're about to talk about a true auteur. Bruno Mattei was making schlock in Italy, and had a writing partner in Claudio Fragasso. And those two, if you watch their movies now, where are we at 40 years later, I can't wait to hear the discussion today, but there is a definite style, like you can tell a Mattei film, excuse me. I always want to say Mattei. It's Mattei, Bruno Mattei. You can tell one of his movies, I think, within 15 minutes. There's a particular style to them. There's a particular way that characters talk to each other, which is not quite human, but fun and interesting. I've always been a fan, and so very excited to do this today. Thought we would go reach out to somebody who's an expert in Italian genre filmmaking and teaches it in one of his courses at a university. And we just had a fun conversation about Bruno Mattei. Mattei, damn it, it's so hard for me to say that. Bruno Mattei, his career, kind of his life, how he got hooked up with Fragasso. And I think there's some good nuggets here. I had a lot of fun with this conversation. So let's listen, and then we'll come back and we'll give our opinion. Dr. Will Dodson, thank you so much for making some time for this.
Hey, glad to be here.
Yeah, so we have never done something like this before. Back when we very first started the podcast, we would record interviews, and we were so nervous to ask for time for people that we were like, we just need 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, whatever. And so we used to do the interview in the middle of the episode. And then all of a sudden we asked for 20 minutes from somebody, and they gave us an hour and 20 minutes or something. And we were like, wait a minute, maybe people don't care. Maybe people are okay talking about this thing they're really passionate about. So then we broke out the interview into full episodes. But we've never done what we're doing today here, as far as having you come and help introduce the theme for the episode. So thank you for being the first.
Sure, glad to do it. And I'll stick to 20 minutes.
No, it's okay. Yeah, that wasn't a threat. That would be amazing if we made a whole episode of this. But the intro to Bruno Mattei episode, at that point it's a video essay, right?
Right. Oh, and what to say about Bruno Mattei? So much.
Yeah, or Vincent Dawn. We could do maybe 30 minutes just on Vincent Dawn. So before we jump into Bruno Mattei specifically, in the movies that we're talking about this week, I thought, I was excited to do this. I kind of introed this last week, last time we were recording, and I said, I'm going back to my roots here. As much as I pretend to like art house movies, like I'm excited to kind of finally go back to my roots with the Bruno Mattei week, or Mattei. Do you know how do you say it?
It is Mattei.
Mattei. Okay, yeah. So I was excited to go back. You can confirm. You said what?
I confirmed it. I Googled how to pronounce Bruno Mattei, and the name pronunciation guide said Bruno Mattei. So that's how.
Oh, that's funny. I wonder, was it the one that's like kind of like robotic sounding, or was it a human doing it?
Yeah. It's well, no, it was a human voice.
Okay.
I assume there's some sort of automation, but yeah, it was a little channel about how to pronounce Italian names.
Because I don't know, almost every episode I'm using something, and it's like it's a kind of a robotic voice that comes on. It's like Bruno Mattei, and I'm always like, I was like, all right, I'll just go with it. Sorry. So, it's funny to me because my intro to him was through Trolls 2 and learning about Claudio Fragasso and taking a deep dive into who this gentleman was, and then coming across the name of his partner. Do you remember like how you first found him, or where you first kind of heard the name?
Yes, I do. It was, and for me, a typically nerdy fashion, I was like trying to immerse myself in the entire history of Italian genre cinema.
Okay, yeah, sure.
So I was like watching everything I could find. And I think the first thing I saw with Mattei's name on it was Violence in a Women's Prison.
Okay.
It's kind of a Black Emanuel adjacent film that stars Laura Gemser. And he worked on one of the Black Emanuel films and also did another film that's not really Black Emanuel, but it has Laura Gemser in it. So it's it was kind of shoehorned in. It's like Porno Nights 2 or something like that, but it's not a porno, but it is a sexploitation. I had been, and then I guess I saw Hell of the Living Dead because, which I know we're going to talk about extensively, because I had picked up the old Anchor Bay DVD of it.
Okay. Shout out to Anchor Bay.
Yeah. And I've probably had 6 or 7 versions of Hell of the Living Dead and Rat's Night of Terror, culminating in the Blue Underground double feature Blu-ray, which I got to watch just last night before recording. So when I first encountered Mattei's work, what I had read was that he was kind of considered a hack, very derivative, and that might be true from one perspective, but the more of his films I started watching, the more I saw kind of how he was kind of the history of that time. His first film was like mid 60s, right? But most of his best work is in the 70s and early 80s, and those were the heydays of the Nazi exploitation film, the zombie film, the women's prison film, the Vietnam exploitation stuff, and the various like Italian knockoffs of American blockbusters.
Yep.
And that also coincided with, I'm going to ramble here for a second, but it coincided with the period of Italian history that's now called the Years of Lead. Are you familiar with that term?
Only recently through my newfound passion for Poliziotteschi movies and kind of digging into a lot of that stuff. Yeah. So that was kind of a 10 or 15 year period there in the 70s, early 80s that was the most violent period in terms of domestic terrorism, assassinations, bombings, shootings committed by both right-wing and left-wing terrorists.
as well as, you know, the presence of the mafia. And it was also during a time that like the Italian colonial project in North Africa had like kind of fully extracted itself, had left, just like, you know, French colonial disengagement and English colonial disengagement had left like completely unstable and economically devastated, socially devastated entire countries, right?
Right.
So it was really out of that tension that the cannibal film and all these other, the Mondo film, all these genres kind of developed. And in these, you know, definitely, you know, Bruno follows the model of, you know, make a genre movie, make another genre movie, and keep making a genre movie and on the same formula until the money dries out, and then move on to the next one. I mean, you can look at his filmography and see, you know, two Nazi exploitation movies in a row, two like zombie movies in a row, two or three like possession movies, and then a Caligula movie, and then you get to the 80s and it's like all Vietnam action movies, and then a Terminator ripoff and a Jaws ripoff. So I guess going back to your original question, you know, he's really kind of, you know, compared to the masters or the Argentos, the Fulcis, and so on, you know, Bruno Mattei is kind of a minor artist, or you might consider him a craftsperson. But if you watch his movies or a lot of his filmography, you really get an interesting through line of what was happening in Italian genre cinema as a whole. And
I love that.
I find his films very enjoyable. We can talk specifically about particular ones as we go along, but I'll shut up for a minute.
No, that's actually, so I'm glad you kind of ended there, because that was one of the things I wanted to say about him is like, Rogerio Deodato makes amazing movies, right? Pasolini makes amazing movies. There are these directors that kind of either walk that line or just delve fully into exploitation, but they do it with a very heavy, like, it's difficult to get through, like it's hard, like they drag you through the muck, right? And like, I think that's one thing I love about honestly, as much as he's, you know, in the deep end of exploitation, even Joe D'Amato films, I think, have a little bit of the heaviness to them, or like they really like lean on the violence and the sex and the rape and stuff to, like, I don't know, where that's more of like the focus. But this is the thing about Mattei movies that I love, is like, you're always in for a good time. Like it just seems like he's having a blast.
Yeah, there's an element of camp and silliness to the films, even when they do have some serious stuff. And you mentioned Claudio Fragasso, and of course his partner, both as a writer and his romantic partner, Rossella Drudy. When they started working with Mattei in the early 80s, I think they deserve a lot of the credit for bringing in some admittedly clunky political content.
Okay.
Kind of progressive political content, specifically in Hell of the Living Dead and Rats, Night of Terror. Those are some message movies. In addition,
oh my God, there's so much dialogue in Rats.
Yeah, but I mean, in addition to being, you know, just ridiculous good time, there's some real perspective in there.
Well, I did get the sense that Fragasso, because you know, obviously Troll 2 is kind of it is what it is, right? That's I don't think he was made exactly what he was hoping he was going to make there. Although I'm so happy with the final result.
Yeah.
But even in that, just going, the only reason I mentioned it is just kind of, that was my intro, but like, even in that, I could see the way he was fumbling through building a world and creating characters and like setting up, like I could see what he was doing. And so that made me interested in going back and seeing his stuff in his native language, because I thought maybe, turns out most of his stuff is dubbed anyways. But I think Fragasso I like, because he's like this dreamer, right? He's sort of like you meet somebody who never studied the chords of how to play guitar, or like studied music, sorry, but they're a good guitarist, and you're like, how'd you learn? Like, I just kind of fumbled around and make sounds that I like to hear or something, like. And I think Fragasso knows how to tell a story that's engaging, and it moves like at a brisk pace, and the characters say things that are like not always what humans would say like in that moment, but funny and entertaining. And so I always like his scripts.
Yeah. I was looking at a little documentary that comes on the Hell of the Living Dead Rats double feature Blu-ray. That is primarily an interview with Fragasso, and it shows some, he and Rosella Drudy have been married for over 30 years, and it showed some pictures of them when they were young, and he was a handsome devil.
Okay.
And she was straight up hottie. And
okay.
Yeah, these pictures are amazing. They look so idyllic and lovely and like full of creativity. I'm telling you, this is just what I was taking from looking at these still photos of them.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to, at this point, they're fairly elderly people, but still working together and still very much in love, based on the interview. But what I thought was really cool is that the interview starts out with Fragasso pushing his way into the kitchen of a restaurant and kind of asking the chef, like, can I come in and like stir some shit around, and talking about how the chef is the best like Italian and Sardinian cuisine in the world, and he's
okay,
and all the I don't know what you call the like secondary chefs and busboys and stuff are kind of in the background, smiling and looking confused, and and it reminded me of like Fragasso and Drudy, their stories they're just so like smashed together, and people are colliding, and
okay,
and people are just stepping into places exuberantly even though they shouldn't be there, and it was a real
it's like they're just writing themselves into all these characters. I love it.
Right.
Well, so do you have, before we get into the movies that we're going to be talking about, do you have a favorite Mattei film?
I was looking, I have an obscene collection of movies, and I got them very meticulously organized. So I went and found all my Mattei movies. I've got about 15 of them. And most
Wait, do you organize by director?
No, but I organize alphabetically, or I'd never find anything.
Yeah.
But then I keep a list of
yeah.
And most of the stuff I have is put out by Severin at this point. I recently watched Strike Commando and Strike Commando 2 for the first time. He did Strike Commando 2, which was fantastic. I really like Cruel Jaws, the Jaws ripoff movie.
Jaws 5.
Jaws 5, right? But watching it again, I think I'm going to go with a tie between The Other Hell, which is a kind of exorcist,
okay,
and Rats: Night of Terror. Watching Rats again reminded me that's actually a really well shot, really unsettling movie.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it a lot. So I'm going to say Rats is my number one. Other Hell, and I'll put Hell of the Living Dead up there too. I think that's one of those three are probably, I think, would be in most people's top 5 or so.
Love it. Yeah, no, for sure. I had the first Mattei film I had seen was the Nun movie, and so despite my interest in seeing his stuff, I just, how life goes on. Like I just hadn't seen a lot of his movies. He kind of had this lore in my head forever of like, oh, I got to see more Mattei movies or whatever. But I just never got around to him. And when Severin put out the Nun set, I watched the true story of the Nun of Monza. That movie is bonkers. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't watched that one yet.
It's crazy. Like, yeah, that's actually kind of fun. It's pretty fun. There's some movies that are like really well made movies, like legitimately like just well made kind of art house movies telling a story about a nun who's trying to fight between the passions of the flesh and the passions of the spirit or whatever. And then you can tell the producer was like, okay, that's good. And now we need 30 seconds of penetration.
Oh gosh.
So like there's some movies that are in that bucket. And then there's some movies like D'Amato, it probably has the craziest one, not surprisingly. And then Mattei's movie is fun as well. I was like, okay, I don't know if that was the best place to get started. I just think Strike Commando 1 and 2 were just fun as hell. Like you said, just like so fun. I love that. What's the one that he made that's actually a Predator movie?
Robo War.
Robo War is really fun. But honestly, like Rats is like his masterpiece, I think. Like how do you it's got everything you want. Like I love it. Like
yeah, I got a lot to say about that one. I'm excited to get into them.
Yeah, well, let's do it then. So when are these the first time view for both of these on you, or?
No, but it's the first time since the DVD days.
Okay.
So what, 20 years? 20 years?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I picked up the Blue Underground double feature Blu-ray, like I said.
Yeah, that's what I saw him on too.
And yeah, and the picture and sound quality were much better than I recalled. Especially in Rats. Of course, with Hell of the Living Dead, there's a lot of stock footage that's kind of artfully woven in from a documentary in New Guinea, and that footage, is a little beat up, but overall, it looked terrific. Well, I guess I should say I had sort of seen Hell of the Living Dead very recently, because you remember that pandemic? Yeah. I don't know if you heard about this or saw it, but Charles Band released the first Corona movie, Corona Zombies. Have you heard of this film?
No.
Oh man, it's genius. So he got a couple of actresses and filmed some like wraparound scenes, socially distant scenes, and cut it with footage from a film called Zombie Strippers. So so the Zombie Strippers mayhem was made to look like what the coronavirus was doing to everybody. And so then I should give them respect and look up their names. So this is 2020. And so then the actresses who are Cody Renee Cameron and Robin Sidney, they play Barbie and Kendra. So anyway, they find they stumble upon a videotape that kind of shows how the coronavirus got started, and it's Hell of the Living Dead, but redubbed with like this comedic.
Oh wow!
And Band ended up. It was so good that Band made 2 more of those films with Barbie and Kendra. One was. Yeah, definitely. I think they're on DVD as well as the Full Moon streaming. They're definitely worth it. But anyway, so I'd seen Hell of the Living Dead kind of recently, but it was in a different context. So yeah, first time in 20 years actually seeing the movies.
Awesome. Yeah, same. I had not seen either of these before, so that's what kind of one of the reasons I chose them was I wanted to. I always heard his horror films were his best films. At least most loved. So I was excited to dive in. But yeah, so what did you think getting back into him?
Well, speaking of the political content, right? The whole scenario for Hell of the Living Dead is really on point and maybe even more relevant today, right? We were talking
Right.
about the post-colonial devastation. And so the whole conceit of the movie, right? Fragasso said that originally the idea was for this Hope Center to produce some kind of Soylent Green type of idea for stopping world hunger, but then the idea evolved into Operation Sweet Death, a conspiracy by first world countries to lower the third world population by turning them into zombie flesh eaters so that they would eat each other. And so that's it's a clumsy metaphor, but it's a pretty apt metaphor for the kind of the sort of devastation of post-colonial what's the word that I'm trying to think of?
Like where they just leave it in shambles, they leave these countries,
exactly.
like just the wreckage, basically.
Wreckage, the wreckage, and then all the problems and civil wars and tribalism that goes on, corruption, and then the continued economic exploitation, for diamonds and
Right.
rubber and whatever else. So
Right.
the whole setup for the movie is great, and but it starts out so campy. You've got those two technicians checking out the gas production factory, and
Yeah.
the zombie rat that somehow gets into the guy's suit.
Yeah.
And as he dies, he dramatically falls into every every dial and lever that he can to release the gas and start the zombie outbreak. It's just hilarious. So I really enjoyed it. And I think this is indicative of Mattei's movies in general. He is a really good craftsman. He's always working on a really low budget. So a lot of the stuff looks rushed, but then all of a sudden you'll see a sequence that is just masterful.
Mm-hmm.
So about 30 minutes in, there's this shot of a zombie in a lab coat. Our main characters have gone to New Guinea. They're trying to document what's going on. And so this woman is being attacked by a zombie. This guy had been a scientist or something. And he's coming across, they're in a dark classroom, and she's standing in front of a black chalkboard. And it's just a gorgeous shot of this composition of the zombie coming at her standing in front of the blackboard screaming. And it really kind of wakes you up. The movie kind of drags here and there, especially when they intercut the stock footage. But then here's this pure cinema moment. There's another great shot towards the end of the surviving soldiers and journalists driving in a Jeep across the desert while zombies kind of that part. Really, really great. I also thought, and this had to be unintentional, but I definitely felt these parallels to the Ebola outbreak of a couple decades ago now. Wow.
Oh wow, yeah, that was it was the late 90s or early 2000s. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and some of the same problems, right? The journalist characters are or no, there's some politicians who are kind of arguing, and they're talking about how the natives are vulnerable because they won't burn their dead, right? They're following the religious customs of sitting in wake with these dead bodies, who are turning into zombies and spreading the contagion. And there were similar problems where, during the Ebola outbreak, where these Western scientists were going in and just burning bodies or forcing, native tribes people to burn their bodies in violation of their religious customs, and they weren't communicating, explaining why it had to happen. So there was this resistance going on, and the resistance was causing more spread of the disease. But it was really kind of on the scientists and technicians because they weren't.
It's like just spend 30 minutes explaining what you're trying to do.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And so, yeah, parallels there. That same scene, right, and where the politicians are arguing, some of the African leaders are like specifically saying, like, you all have destroyed our country. It's really unbelievable. And then at the same time, there are all these scenes that are like really uncomfortably kind of racist.
Oh my gosh, yeah, so much so.
Of these soldiers kind of hanging around some tribes people who are being, made to look like total stereotypical cartoon characters. So yeah, you go from this like weird discomfort with a racial caricature to, wow, they just made this really prescient and progressive political statement. I don't know.
I was trying to look this up quickly, but I couldn't. My internet's not helping me. When did Dawn of the Dead come out? That wasn't 80, right? That was in the 70s, like 76, 75, in that range?
Yeah, and Fragasso said that they were very influenced by Dawn of the Dead for this movie, and said that they were trying to like model the soldiers' uniforms on.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know how much parallel I see to Dawn of the Dead, but certainly you can kind of see what they were going for.
Because the year before Dawn of the Dead, or maybe 2 years before, Romero made The Crazies, right? Have you ever seen that?
Oh, that's my favorite Romero movie.
Oh, well, there we go. Yeah. And like I felt some parallels to The Crazies in the way that, like, I don't think that they were necessarily trying to remake it or anything, but you have this like small contained group, and in The Crazies, they're trying so hard to like keep it in this little city, right? And then in the end, it's this really like defeat, like this moment of defeat for this that guy who's the lead, I guess, military guy who's trying to contain these things, because he has to go to a bigger city now where they're starting to have an outbreak. And he's just like, and you see him. It's a weird sequence. It's very artfully done, kind of surprisingly, because it's like that black screen, and you just see him undressing and kind of thinking about what's to come and being sad, and that's how the movie ends. And it's like, damn. And this one I think had a similar tone, where it's just like you start off by, or I mean, you end with basically like that couple getting attacked, right, in a bigger city.
Yeah. It was a very nihilistic ending.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We've got the journalist Leah Rousseau saying, she's going to tell the world what's going on, and then her tongue and her eyeballs are ripped out. Which is a fitting end for a journalist, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah, little touches like that remind you that there is an artist at work.
Speaking of nihilistic ending, maybe that's the perfect segue to Rats, because one of the things that cracked me up so much about Rats is, like, it's not common, if you're not George R.R. Martin, it's not common to have all the main characters that we've become so attached to die off and have the supporting characters end the movie.
Yeah.
I was like, it's kind of awesome. Like, why don't all of a sudden now I care the most about chocolate and video?
Yeah, and how the main characters kind of Kurt and them kind of sacrifice themselves.
Yeah.
It's like the other guys or something.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great movie.
Yeah, so Rats, man. First, I love that it's set in an apocalyptic future of 2025. And that the future it depicts looks pretty close to the one we're headed to.
Especially with all the wildfires over New York City, like they look very similar right now.
Yeah. I kind of like laughed, and then I was like, oh no, actually it's probably going to look just like this.
Whoops. Yeah.
And it starts off, I feel like there's a direct visual quote from The Wild One, with Marlon Brando, right at the beginning.
With the sun?
The biker gang rides into town.
Yeah.
Talking about, and
Yeah. Oh, okay. I haven't seen that movie. So off this. Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so it's like the Wild One, but with rats. Um, and Fragasso said that this film was intended to be Night of the Living Dead, but with rats. That's a direct paraphrase from his interview, and I can kind of see it. Right, they're like kind of barricaded up and trying to keep these genetically altered rats out.
Sure. Sure.
A lot of old dark house gothic set pieces,
Oh, nice. Yeah.
complete with organ music. Right, this is a really
Yeah.
classical kind of horror movie in terms of its style. I think it looks great.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
this,
Definitely.
this movie, Mattei took his time and um,
So probably 4 weeks.
but like some really great shots. And speaking of the old dark house conceit, I felt like there were these. Well, I mean, I don't think it would be deliberate, obviously, but there were these real Scooby Doo moments where a group of the characters will like bunch up, they'll be running and then bunch up on each other in the frame and kind of looking around the corner, and those little moments of humor. um I think that this movie also has the all-time great Bruno Mattei line. I know that's the English dub, so I don't know that it was written by anybody actually involved in the movie. But when
Yeah.
we discover the first dead body and Kurt says, "We must explore this shitty place," that kind of sums up the main character's plight in every Bruno Mattei movie. So I really loved all that stuff.
That's funny.
Um,
Yeah.
so you said you were watching this for the first time. What were your initial thoughts on it?
Yeah, I was. This is the thing that I love about, I think if I have like in my head, if I'm gonna like be selling Mattei to somebody who's like kind of skeptical because maybe they think he's a little cheesy in the writing or something, he like, it's a funny, he's, to me, he's somebody who the movie that you see on the poster is not what you're gonna get, but usually in because it's gonna be better. It's almost like his marketing team hurt his movies because they tried to box it in and make it like they're so interested in making it tied to something that people would know, that they didn't give the movies the credit. Like this movie is on par with any of the like Ozploitation kind of apocalyptic movies that have come out, that are not called Mad Max. There's that whole burst of like
Yeah,
future movies that came out of there. Is it Brian Trenchard Smith? Is that
yeah,
right? Yeah, like a lot of that kind of stuff. There's it's on par with like any of the other Italian filmmakers. Like this is just a good genre movie. It's great. Like I love this. I don't know if this is my entry point to Mattei for people, only because it's like maybe the best. So I don't know. There's probably, you probably start with something else to kind of get people warmed up to him a little bit before you show the masterpiece. But yeah, I loved it. Like this movie's fantastic. I love the. I hadn't thought about Night of the Living Dead. I'm okay with that. I still think it's something unique. Like which makes sense. I mean, they're not going to copy it, word for line or anything.
well, I
But
mean, in some ways, like I said, I keep bringing up the old dark house. I think that this is a classical movie. I think Night of the Living Dead, while it's more of a kind of documentary style cinema verite almost, but it's also an old dark house movie. So I think that
that's true.
in that sense, they have something in common. But yeah, you're right. It's a very different film from Night of the Living Dead, in no small part due to the style.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And like and the Mattei touch, or maybe the Fragasso touch, but like it has one of my favorite reveals ever. So slow pan across the bedroom where they're all sleeping, and you hear this couple having sex, right?
Mhm.
You just hear like the lady like getting into it, right? She's like really feeling it. She's having a good time. Cuts to the final, or pans, excuse me, to the final bed where the guy's like had enough.
Yeah.
And then it does a hard cut, it backs up a little bit, and they're in a sleeping bag right at the foot of the bed. I was
Yeah.
like, yes, that's amazing. Because like you just assume they're in the other room, but they're like right there, right at the foot of their bed.
Yeah, that's a crazy sequence too, right? You get the full peen and
Oh yeah.
and then after it, one of the most disturbing death scenes, right?
Yeah,
I don't
sure.
know, I don't know if I should. I don't want to spoil it necessarily, but
Well, the violence in this movie, it kind of hits hard because like, they have the whole like it's really gross the way that they have the rats like crawling out of the bodies.
yeah, it's disturbing.
It works, right? Yeah, you're like,
And that, watching these films again, back to back after so long, I've I've been watching horror movies my whole adult life, and I've seen a lot. But for some reason, both of these movies like grossed me out in a good way. Like I was watching them and actually affected.
yeah.
Like to the point that at times I found myself kind of looking away inadvertently, just because some of the gore shots were really gross,
Especially Hell of the Living Dead. I think the way they did the zombies eating the humans
Yeah.
was awesome. It's very impactful.
Yeah, that was like I think, I mean, in a lot of those shots, it was like real pig guts. So um, it looks gross because it is gross.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, I don't know if there's anything else to say. I mean, this is a fantastic intro to um the man, the myth, the legend. What if you were gonna sell Mattei to somebody who was skeptical to go in because they liked Fellini, but they weren't willing to delve too much more into Italian filmmaking. Maybe they were gonna, they just finished a Rossellini run. What's your pitch? Why they should see a Mattei movie?
Well, I don't know if I can get people from Fellini and Rossellini to, well, certainly what you'll see in a Mattei movie is collections of very strange and bizarre characters. So if you're into Fellini, you can find some of that.
Uh-huh.
You'll see some, really ingenious camera work, blocking, and editing that I think a neorealist like Rossellini would be impressed by. And if you're interested in a history of Italian genre film, he's done a little. He did a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And Hell of the Living Dead in particular is kind of a mashup of a cannibal film, a zombie film, and a Mondo movie.
Yeah, I was not expecting the Mondo stuff in there. That was interesting.
Yeah. So, if your idea of Italian cinema is, neorealism and Antonioni and stuff like that, then Mattei is the underbelly, right? And like other genre filmmakers, he's making the movies that people actually paid to go see, that subsidize the art movies that not many people want to watch.
You stole mine. That was the thing, right? He was so engaged, and like people loved that stuff.
Yeah. And so I would encourage anybody to take a deep dive into Mattei, because it's really interesting to see a filmmaker who kind of sees themselves as more of a craftsman than an artist, but also manages to, here and there make some really beautiful compositions, but also like knows exactly what he's making and has fun, like leans all the way into the silliness.
Yeah.
It's not grim the way Deodato is, for example. And yeah, you get a survey of everything from nunsploitation to nomsploitation,
That's the title of your next book.
Oh, hey, good idea.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for making time for this. I love this little intro segment. We may, whenever we do a genre week, or actually anything, you're pretty good at CrossFit, we may call you back.
Oh, I'll be happy to. I can't wait to hear the whole conversation about this.
Awesome.
So I hope you enjoyed Chris's chat there with Will Dodson. It was great to have Will back on the podcast in a cameo role to talk about his sort of area of expertise before we fumble through it for the next hour. The first film that we're going to touch on from Bruno has many titles. Night of the Zombies, Virus. I saw one that was Hell of the Living Dead. There was another one. I'm trying to remember what.
Zombie 4 as well.
Zombie 4. Oh, it was called something different when I watched it. I'm just trying to find it now. What it was called.
There's Zombie Creeping Flesh, which is pretty good.
That was it. That was what it was called. Zombie Creeping Flesh was the version that I saw when I rented it from iTunes. So many different titles. I'll give you the sort of rundown from what Letterboxd say about this movie. And then Chris can tell us. I'm sure we're all waiting with bated breath to find out where this is on the They Shoot Pictures list. But the synopsis from Letterboxd reads as follows. A tough female reporter and her cameraman boyfriend team up with a 4-man commando unit in the New Guinea jungle whom are fighting flesh-eating zombies. There you go.
Oh, yeah. One of my favorite titles that it got when for a brief time it was known as Dusk of the Dead.
Dusk of the Dead.
They're really trying.
They really honed in on the Dawn of the Dead shit.
Which I do want to bring up. So it says it's composed by Goblin, and I don't know if you know anything about it, Chris.
But it wasn't, though.
It's Dawn of the Dead. It's the Dawn of the Dead soundtrack.
Exactly. I was reading this. So yes, technically the music is by Goblin, but it was just Goblin music from other movies that they lifted. It wasn't scored for this film. They literally just stole other Goblin music and just put it in this film.
Which is fascinating, because if this is Zombie 4, this would mean it is 2 sequels removed from what is considered Zombie 1, which is Dawn of the Dead.
Right.
And that would mean zombie flesh eaters is Zombie 2. I don't even know what Zombie 3 is. Like, it doesn't matter, because if you go into the Night of the Living Dead, quote unquote sequels, it's 100 of them, because everyone is just taken from Romero to this weird extent, which is fascinating. But is Goblin were they even aware that their music was being used, or is this just kind of that weird loophole thing that Italy kind of gets through with how they do these sequels and everything?
I don't know. There's one piece I don't really know to this discussion, which is how strict they were on rights, in terms of being able to sue for the use of their music, and if they found some really cheap loophole to get around, right?
I mean, in the US, if we take one of Halloween movies made before Carpenter got re-involved, I mean, they still use the Halloween theme. So technically, if this is it's weird, because while this is a sequel, it's only because they slapped the name on it. It's not an actual sequel. And
no. There's no formal tie. Yeah. No, 100%. I don't. Yeah, this is what they did, though, right? They just sort of marketed it. So Zombie 3 came out as Zombie 3. I'm just looking through all the different titles were Zombie 3.
And I want to say there are 2 or 3 movies called Zombie 3 when I was looking through the big timeline of how they're all connected. I think there's a few, or it's Zombie 5 or something, is there are 2 or 3 movies with that title, that claim.
I love it.
I have an answer to your question on Goblin.
Okay.
So I'm reading this directly from the Wikipedia page for the movie. The score is credited to the band Goblin, but it is mostly taken from other film scores Goblin performed, such as Dawn of the Dead and Contamination. Mattei was a fan of their music and secured rights to it for the film through Carlo Bizio. Fragasso stated that the music was from other films and from their album Roller, as Goblin were too expensive at the time to get for an original score.
So they did it legally, but in the cheapest way possible. That's
awesome. Exactly. They were like, I want Goblin, but I don't want to have to pay them to write new music. Let's just pay them less money to use the music they already wrote.
It's actually amazing they're allowed to use Dawn of the Dead rights are fascinating anyway, because it's that'd be like hearing a Halloween theme in a Friday the 13th movie.
Right.
it's like it feels weird to hear like the Dawn of the Dead track throughout the whole thing.
I don't know. I don't know if off the top of my head, there's that the Bollywood horror movie called Mahakal. That's Friday the 13th, like a Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm sorry, not Friday the 13th, a Nightmare on Elm Street ripoff.
I'm gonna watch it now. I did not know it existed, but
I've seen a poster for it once on an article about ripoffs. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, Zach, you'd love it. Yeah, if you don't know, it's crazy. It's like Friday. I keep saying Friday. It's like Freddy Krueger, sort of light, but with a little bit of musical numbers, and it's also like a slasher movie. So it's just like a combination of everything that's wonderful.
It's what Freddy's Dead should have been, I guess.
Yeah, it'd be the modern equivalent, which I'm really curious what they're going to do. Haven't they talked about making the second Joker movie a musical?
Yeah, Lady Gaga is going to be in it as Harley Quinn.
So that'll be super interesting, right? Like way to take that in a whole new direction. Yeah, Bruno Mattei. Damn it, Bruno Mattei. So the thing that I think is, I don't know if y'all noticed this, but the movie's kind of racist, or at least definitely exploitive. Let me at least say that, of maybe like indigenous tribes to Indonesia, right, or Papua New Guinea. That wasn't new footage. I don't know if y'all know that. That was stock footage that he just spliced in.
I was kind of wondering about, I don't know if it was particularly that, but there were some things I'm like, this looks weird in the movie, so that might be the reason.
So early on in his career, he was an editor by training. So he claims to have edited 100 movies before he directed, but I think what I could tell, the real numbers around like 50. But still, he was like a real editor for Italy, for Italian filmmaking. So he's good at it, and I guess he kind of took that Godfrey Ho approach of just wanting to be entertaining first, and then letting the footage kind of be like a secondary concern. So so all that stuff there was like 3 movements happening. This is what we just, heard from Will, so I don't want to repeat it, but like, I just think it's cool that he kind of capitalized on the Mondo movement of just basically exploiting undiscovered culture, but doing it in a very exploitive and sort of uncomfortable way. And he took the cannibal genre and then the zombie genre.
It could be interesting though, because if it's done right, I'm not saying this was, but like zombies have their roots in like hoodoo and voodoo, Haitian magic sort of thing.
Sure.
And there movies before Romero did explore that, like I Walk with a Zombie, and stuff like that. So you could do that interestingly. It's just not here, but the idea could be done well.
Yeah, I was thinking that as well, because I've seen I Walked with a Zombie, and it's a great film, but it's also very respectful of that culture. And Night of the Zombies is kind of weird because the zombies are not really caused by any kind of cultural thing. I don't really see any reason at all why it's even in New Guinea. Maybe I'm misremembering. I know there's like, obviously it's all kind of stems from a factory and stuff, but I have no idea why it was where it takes place where it did. Because it's not like I Walked with a Zombie where it takes place in Haiti, if I remember correctly, because obviously that's indicative to the plot. That's where the sort of titular zombie comes from. It comes from that sort of culture. Whereas I don't know why this film takes place in New Guinea. Except for one thing that I kind of figured with the film. And I'll come out and say that I don't like this movie, unfortunately. I didn't enjoy it. Definitely not as much as I enjoyed the next film that we're going to talk about. I didn't really like this. I didn't really get much out of it. Apart from some of the special effects being pretty okay. Some of the gore was done pretty well, which is always respective. I can't remember the right word, but yeah, it's always good to see gore done pretty well.
Yeah,
but there's this undertone in this film that's like that they could have leaned into harder, and maybe it's just maybe reading into it too much, or maybe they just didn't want to lean into it because they just wanted to have a fun movie or whatever. But there is this kind of idea of the negative ramifications of colonialism. The way they set up this factory and it basically is destroying the island and destroying the native people and everything like that, because Western people are coming in and sticking their nose in places that doesn't belong to them, and it ends up having huge ramifications on the indigenous people and the indigenous environment. That was kind of takeaway I took from it. That was maybe the moral of this story. But again, it's a Bruno Mattei film, so I don't know how deeply we can look into that kind of stuff, because I don't really know the full context. I don't know if he was involved in the script or if he was just like a guy who just sat behind a director's chair. I don't know how much of that we attribute to him or attribute to writers or whatever, but I found that undertone interesting, and that was pretty much the only thing I found interesting about the film.
It's one of those things especially when you're looking at something that's still sort of connected to Romero, that when you take these like tropes that he created, I'm not saying that they didn't have this in mind, but I also think it's possible you can accidentally have that come across, just because like you're taking these ideas and tropes that have come from a main source and it just kind of sticks around. Whether or not, because you're like, oh, that plot sounds interesting, let's do that. And you're not really thinking about like the ramifications of anything else. You're just like, yeah, that plot, it sounds cool and it makes sense. And then you're just, because you already have like the social element especially within zombies anyway, but you have it within specifically Romero type zombies. I don't know. It definitely could have been thoughtful, but I could also see it kind of just accidentally coming about.
Well, that's definitely like, Romero, we talk about the racial aspect of Night of the Living Dead, which is a complete accident. As Romero said, the black guy happened to be the best actor out of all of our friends. So complete accident. There wasn't meant to be a racial undertone to Night of the Living Dead. So, this accidental social commentary definitely has its source, with Romero.
No, but this is the enigma of Claudio Fragasso, right? So this is the writer that he found, who was he was this very intelligent, worldly, interesting person, right? Who unfortunately, well, and I should say had good ideas, interesting ideas, and unfortunately he just struggled to write dialogue. Like this, my favorite thing about these movies is none of these were meant to be funny, which to me just shows an incredible lack of self-awareness and kind of makes me love them more. But like, for Fragasso, when he was writing these, I think Mattei was kind of co-writing, let's say, but a lot of these are like Fragasso's babies. And like he really wanted to tell this story. There were some colonial issues in Africa and between Italy and Africa. So this would not have been totally foreign to Italians. They were angry about some of what had happened there. Much like French in Algeria, right? They had the kind of bitterness towards the French government for a while. And so there was a lot of similar kind of protests and anger towards the Italian government for that. So there was some of that sentiment going on. But yeah, like this was really, I think this was intentional. I think if I were to guess, it's probably 90% go make a zombie movie because they're successful in the US, right? And like 10% or maybe 8%, like, okay, let's use cannibal footage because that's kind of popular, and this Mondo sort of Kane footage because that's popular, and then 2% or so like let's make it something really personal. But that, like, if you read interviews with Fragasso or anything, like none of these movies was he trying to be funny, other than when the characters are like joking around. But a lot of the like unintentional comedy that comes from these things is like not, it is actually unintentional. He wasn't really like leaning into the fact that he's making a silly movie.
I think the issue I have with like the movies I've seen for Gossip, because I was looking through his thing and I also realized he did Beyond Darkness, which I've actually seen, the House 5 or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
Vinegar Syndrome put out a copy years ago, or maybe a year ago.
Mhm.
And they all deal with these horrible pacing issues. Like for movies that aren't that long, like this one felt really long. And I don't know if it's just because I wasn't enjoying it, but I was like, man, this is like Beyond Darkness. I actually like that movie, but it's really badly paced. And I've seemed to notice that with at least what I've seen so far. And I think that kind of, I could get by the dialogue a little bit better than I can the kind of cumbersome pace that comes with it.
Yeah, the story and I think just generally this film just felt like a mess. Like I couldn't really get behind much of what was happening because it all just kind of seemed to happen at random. Like there's that shit that goes on in like some embassy, and then they're back to a factory, and then they're in the jungle, and it's just all over the place. The film is just an absolute mess. So I just kind of struggled to even get behind the story really because I could barely follow it.
I did want to know the funniest thing in the movie to me though is at the beginning of the film when they're like noticing, I guess it's like a nuclear power plant's about to like whatever it's going to do. I don't think he knew what it was going to do either. It was just going to be bad. But they're showing the dial and like, look at this dial. And you can like subtly see the actor slowly change the dial next to it, because I'm guessing that's the mechanics to make it look like it's like hit the red. And I just think that's hysterical. Like you can just like, he's trying to be real subtle about it.
I like the dialogue that they're like, what do you say? He's like, my girlfriend doesn't like chemistry, but she has great reactions in bed. I don't know. Okay, so that's fine. So this one was kind of a bust for y'all, but that's fine. I'm glad we did the double feature with Rats because there's no way y'all hated Rats. But I think yeah, I like this. I like the fact that it's a mess. I think I'm trying to think about the pacing. I honestly like this one is probably paced a little slow at times. There's a lot of maybe filler or something like that. They could probably pack the story a little tighter.
I'm gonna sound like Adam, but this thing's over 100 minutes long. It's like, why is this? It's like this is like a good like 80-85 minute movie.
Yeah. Well, they were trying to make something truly epic, right? They could have taken out most of the footage of the indigenous New Guinea tribes. I'm sure most of that probably could have been taken out. I just think the message of the film is pretty messed up, right? Like they're trying to create a virus that is exposed to third world countries so that they can reduce the population by having them eat themselves. Like that's pretty fucked up. And
sounds like a way cooler movie just because that is like a really messed up plot than I think the movie we got.
Okay, from a filmmaking perspective, there's one shot. What do you think about the last shot where they're kind of driving away and the zombies are there? Does that get points?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like talent put behind, like as much as it's fun to make fun of like the dialogue or make fun of like the cheaper effects because they got to do what they can, there's things. But I mean, both movies had like genuine talent behind it. It definitely felt very Italian. Like you watch, like, yep, there's no way this isn't Italian, but it's it's great. Those are probably the parts where it's not just stock footage or wherever he got it from other movies or whatever. A lot of the stuff he did himself actually looked really good.
Yeah, I think so too. It would be fun to see it on 4K. I think it either just got released or just got announced, but both of these are getting a separate 4K release.
Is Blue Underground doing it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. It sounds like their sort of thing, so I was curious. Which means I will now own both of these on 4K.
What a time to be alive where Night of the Zombies is a 4K, but Titanic doesn't.
I agree. Where's my Titanic 4K?
Did y'all hear, speaking of that, did y'all hear the episode of where Ryan from Disconnected interviewed the Unearthed Films guy?
Not yet, no.
But that's an awesome episode, by the way. Like, not, I like that guy's a trip, but he made an interesting comment. He said, that Synapse, which is kind of known for being like the best restorations, he said, they don't do it in-house, right? There's like this mythos of it, that Don May's doing all these restorations. He's like, they're not being done. So apparently whoever Lustig uses at Blue Underground is the same person that Synapse uses.
That doesn't necessarily surprise me, because Blue Underground's probably got some of like the best reference quality 4K stuff that I've seen. Like, it's really good.
But isn't it pretty common that like a lot of Blu-ray companies don't do restorations in-house? Like, like I'll use Criterion as an example. Like, most of Criterion stuff is not done in-house. It's all done by various trusts or universities or film institutions and stuff. So
totally common. That's not that. All I'm saying is that there's a mythos that's been built around Don May as being like the standard for restorations, right? That's why Synapse only does 1 or 2 a year. Like, there's this whole,
I understand. I'm not familiar with their work, so that's obviously
that's all. And to be fair, they do look amazing. So I'm sure that he's involved in the process. Like, they are beautiful releases of all these movies. They have they just released the non-steelbook version of Tombs of the Blind Dead, and that movie on the steelbook version just looks, amazing. So it's Spanish, an obscure Spanish horror film from the 70s has never looked that good.
Is it? It's not, because I know they have a habit too of having different ones. That's not the same thing as The Living Dead at Manchester Morgue, right?
Different, yeah.
Or is that the same movie?
No, different, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, Tombs of the Blind Dead really leans into the Knights of Templar mythology.
I'm already interested. Like, I'm already got to go order some Synapse stuff. That's
yeah. They have you could probably get it super cheap. There's a cool box set that's a coffin from the DVD days.
Oh, okay.
You could probably pick it up super cheap now, and it has 4 of them or 5 of them. The picture quality is not the best, but it might be a cheap way to watch the movies. They're all really good, and they just did the first one. Hopefully they do more.
And they're interesting too. And I'll try not to get us off topic. So I think it may have been Ryan who told me that you can email Synapse on like some of their like out of print DVDs, because I think they do like the Casa Negra and stuff like that. They're like those sets, and they'll send them to you. Like, you got to pay for them, but like you can email them even though they're out of print or whatever, and they'll send you some.
That's awesome. Between returns and stuff they set aside for conferences, sometimes people have extra stuff, right?
Because I know Scream Factory finds new copies all the time.
Yeah, freaking Scream Factory.
Every summer.
I'm beginning to, let's not go too far off topic, but I'm beginning to be very, very neutral to negative on Shout and Scream Factory. Like, I'll still buy their stuff if it's a title I love, but like, they're charging a lot for their stuff.
Well, once we get to what I'm gonna pick, we'll get into Scream Factory. So I'll save mine for there.
Right. Well,
on that note, then, is there anything more we want to talk about zombies, or should we move on to other creatures of the night?
Well, we started talking about Shout of Blue Underground, so it might be time to move on.
No, totally. The only thing I want to call out is that this is a good tie-in. I think this whole plague was started by a rat.
Yes.
So I just want to call that out because it's interesting.
I assume he had somebody here has some fear of rats.
Especially rats with red eyes.
Yeah.
Oh, the albino white ones. Yeah, I used to have one of those as a pet, by the way.
Damn,
super
that's
sweet.
Wait.
So I was like, oh man, that thing is a mutant or something.
Wait, the red eyes aren't an effect? That's how they look for real?
Yeah, they're albino.
With the red eyes?
I'm sure they might. I'd have to go back and look, but yeah, they have red eyes.
There is albino ones with red eyes, but there's ones in this film that we're going to talk about that are brown with red eyes. So I wonder.
Yeah, that's as far as I know, that's not a thing.
Yeah, I was thinking. But yeah, the white ones do have red eyes because they're albino.
That's scary as hell, though. I mean, no offense to the albino community. I'm not saying people, but An albino rat with red eyes. Holy hell! You had that in your house?
Yeah, his name was Algernon. Yeah, he was cute.
That's a cute name.
Yeah.
I'm assuming from the novel, right?
Yes.
That's cute.
Let's talk about not cute rats. So,
Yeah.
a few years after Night of the Zombies, Bruno directed a film called Rats: Night of Terror. Again, I'll just give the quick rundown from Letterboxd. So, and I love this first part. 100 years after a nuclear war has devastated the planet, society has been reborn into two factions: the underground society and the scavengers above in the wastelands. A group of scavengers on bikes come across a town infested with flesh-eating rats, and soon the gore is spilling everywhere. It's a great rundown of this film.
So this is a good thing. I forgot to do this. Let's compare these two, okay? This is what I thought was super interesting. So Hell of the Living Dead or Night of the Zombies was ranked as the 1,133rd best horror film of all time on They Shoot Zombies. And this one was 2014. So I think if anything, it should be switched,
Switch
right?
them.
Switch. Absolutely switch.
Totally. Here's the other thing that blew my mind. Night of the Zombies actually shows up on They Shoot Pictures at 18,000.
18,000. Jesus.
You laugh, but Rats doesn't show up.
Disgrace. This is Rats erasure, and I won't have it.
Yeah. So I just wanted to
kinda
call that out.
I'm gonna go on Letterboxd. I think Night of the Zombie shows up first when you go to Mattei's thing. Yeah, it does. Zombie 3, then Night of the Zombies, then Rats.
They are both rated the same, if that means anything to you. They are both rated the same. They both have a 2.7.
Yeah, it's just Rats has less members who have watched it.
Yeah.
That's why it's not showing up. It's not as well known. That's super interesting because this, I mean, like I liked Night of the Zombies, but this movie is objectively better, right?
For
Like,
sure. 100% better.
Like its influences are there, but it doesn't fit. This one actually feels a lot less like a ripoff. Like I'm like, yeah, I get it. The Mad Max stuff, cool. Like I'm cool with that. Mad Max is awesome, but it feels a lot less obvious and a lot like more interesting stuff is happening.
Yeah, so like this is definitely the big thing for me on why I like this one so much. So this could have been just like a movie set in a building with killer rats. The writers did not have to create all of this lore about a nuclear war and going like 200 years into the future, or 225 ATB after the bomb. And having all this like split factions between people who've gone and returned back to Earth. That does not need to be in this movie at all. But I love that they did it because it just shows effort. Like it shows that, whoever wrote this actually gave a shit. They weren't just trying to make, a movie with killer rats, because they did not have to do any of that part of it. So that is like instantly interested me. The fact that, as I just assumed that this was just going to be set in like just normal contemporary times, and there was going to be a plague of killer rats, and there was going to be some like police or whatever trying to kill the rats or something. That's just what I assumed going in. So when you have that kind of start of the film, which looks like it's ripped straight from Planet of the Apes, in terms of like the stock footage, looks like it comes straight from Planet of the Apes, and they have that kind of Star Wars style text going up with the narrator giving the background. I was like, this film is awesome. This is like so unnecessary. I love it. No, I still don't think it's a great film, right? I gave it a 3.5, and most of that is just purely based on goodwill I got from the fact that they went so hard with the lore behind this movie that they did not need to do.
Nice. 3.5 is a good rating. Zach, what did you think about this?
I mean, I had a good time. I mean, really, the biggest criticism I have is I just didn't really care for the characters, but that's fine. I get good gore out of them at least. But I mean, it's just a good time. Like, yeah, I'm with Adam. Like, I kind of went in thinking it was like a when animals attack sort of movie. So when it starts like the movie with this text scrawl of in the Christian year 2015, the bombs killed everything, I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
The instructions the writer got from producers on this one was to make a Night of the Living Dead ripoff with rats. So
I guess crazy. I kind of see it, but not.
And tone wise, tone-wise, they went for. Do you remember the old Dark House?
Yeah.
So they were trying to this. Okay, I'm kind of laughing saying this, right? Because this is what Will was talking about just a few minutes ago, right? So they had the old Dark House. They were trying to go for tone, and then Night of the Living Dead was the instructions they got. It seems like a stretch. Like I didn't really pick up on either of those.
Yeah, it's like if I'm supposed to get like James Whale directed Night of the Living Dead, it definitely doesn't feel that way.
No. If you misplace the zombies for rats, I can kind of see it just from the sense that they're like enclosed in something, right? But that's about where it ends.
Like, and that's pretty much like nearly every zombie movie ever, right?
No, totally. Yeah, it's not really anything unique. Did the reveal at the end catch all by surprise?
I loved it.
Yeah, it was the end.
So dumb, so stupid. I love it, and I feel like that's like, isn't this like a trope of like sci-fi movies? Obviously, Planet of the Apes is like the most famous example, but isn't that like a trope from like late 60s and 70s sci-fi movies that they would always have this really dumb twist at the end just for the sake of it that didn't really matter?
It happens a lot, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of I don't know. It was dumb, but I liked it. I was fully on board for it.
Well, because they weren't talking, so you're like, okay, why aren't they talking? And then yeah.
I wasn't even considering that, it just kind of came out of nowhere, the twist. What I also found funny about this movie is that the only black character is called Chocolate.
Yeah, I was about to ask about that.
So yeah, that's Italy for you, I guess.
Yeah, I was laughing with my my non-white wife. I was laughing about like representation in these old Italian movies. She didn't think it was as funny as I did, but it's just a different era. Yeah, sure. I don't know. I just thought this movie was awesome. Like I haven't rated it yet, but it's gonna go at least 4 stars, if not 4.5. I love it. Like you said, I love the lore. I think the dialogue fits here well. Like the whole premise is just kind of goofy, right? And so I like the goofiness of it a lot. But it's goofy and kind of campy in a fun way.
Yeah, just for me, like when going into something like this, these are not normally the types of films I watch, as you guys know. Probably a partial reason why you chose these, Chris, is just kind of get us to watch stuff that's kind of different outside of our wheelhouse, very much far away from the stuff I would normally watch. So, when I was going into something like this, I expect it to be bad, but then there's always that hope that the film is going to be fun or intriguing or, something to kind of get you through the poor filmmaking or poor storytelling, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And this completely delivered on my expectations of what I was hoping, for this film to be. Is it like a great film? No, of course not. But it's incredibly fun. It's super goofy, super cheesy. It's not phoned in any way, shape, or form. This is not something. Although it probably was made for a cheap buck, but you can tell that the talent around it, actually were enjoying what they were doing. The writer obviously had a hell of fun writing this crazy backstory.
Yeah.
To get these, for this story about killer rats that is completely unnecessary but completely respected. Obviously the film is fairly competently made the whole way through. I think a lot of the effects, with the getting the sort of on-set rats, there was probably a lot of sort of animatronics or something. I can't imagine how they could have got some of the stuff that the rats did, with normal rats, even if they were trained. So there was kind of probably a mix of effects and real rats. The set design was all pretty good. Costume design was all good. They were able to, by kind of setting it in like a alternative future, they were able to afford to have crappy dialogue because we don't expect them to talk like normal people anyway, because language develops over time and some shit. But yeah, it delivered on my expectations. I expected a dumb fun movie and I got a dumb fun movie, and that's I can't complain about that.
I did want to note, because we were talking about a little bit of like the production and stuff. I just read this and I thought it was fascinating that they use some of the sets from Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in America, which I think is awesome. like how you built New York City there. So I was like, that's cool.
That's exactly what Leone had in mind. If you were to watch another Mattei film, I would recommend. So they do he does a Jaws ripoff called Cruel Jaws. In some markets, it's also called Jaws 5. And
it's got to be better than Jaws 4.
Oh, I'm sure. I haven't seen Jaws 4, but it's pretty good. It definitely was a big ripoff. And then the Terminator 2 movie that he puts out is I think it's either that one or Robo War. I'm a little fuzzy now. It's been a while, but it's basically a Predator ripoff with a little bit of Terminator stuff in it, and so it's pretty great as well.
Yeah, I'm looking through his stuff now. No matter what, all of his stuff got really, really cool posters.
Oh yeah, no, it's all marketing. I mean, this is the thing. Like, if you make a movie for $1 million and it makes $3 million in the box office, everyone's happy, right? Like, that's just kind of what he did. Like, he just kind of knew how to make something that people would watch a little bit of. What are we watching next, Zach?
All right, so no final thoughts on Rats. Anyone have?
I actually do. Because I was trying to figure this out when I was like halfway through, and I didn't want to have to rewind to try and see if I missed something. Why didn't they just fucking leave? Why not? Why didn't they leave? They're in this big building full of killer rats. Why not just go? They have bikes. Just leave.
Well, let's see. Was there any reason they couldn't leave?
I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I don't think so.
I think they read the script.
Because when the people come from underground with the fumigators, right?
Mm-hmm.
It makes it seem like it's this big dramatic entrance from these people that are living underground.
Okay.
But the movie starts with them literally just driving in the open air and not having an issue, right?
Yeah, so that's what I can't figure out. Why didn't they just like leave? Just get on your bike and just go somewhere else.
Yeah, there's no reason.
Okay, cool. That's perfect. That's all I want. I just didn't want to think I missed something crucial because I was halfway through and I'm like, why don't these people just leave? You know, they're in the place that has all the rats. It's not like zombies where if they go outside there's gonna be more. Just leave.
Chris just gave you the diplomatic "fuck you." That's why.
Okay, that's fair enough. I respect it.
No, no. Yeah, no, I can't think of a good reason. It's because there's no movie if they leave.
What wasn't that?
Sometimes
something
the curtains
Hitchcock
are blue, I
said
guess.
at one time, like idiot plot or something, like, or why don't they ever call the police? And it's like, because there'd be no movie.
That's it. Sometimes the curtains are just blue.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, sadly, as far as I remember, neither of the films that I'm picking have rats in them. I could be misremembering. But I think they'll still be a good time. So I wanted for us to explore a little bit of the only two films that William Peter Blatty, the author of the Exorcist novel and the one who wrote the screenplay for the first film, he directed two films. He directed, the first one was The Ninth Configuration. And Ninth Configuration is probably one of the more subtle sequels I've ever seen in a film. There's a part in the book, I can't remember if it's in like the theatrical part of The Exorcist or if it's in the director's cut, but there's a part where Reagan talks to an astronaut and she tells him that he's going to die up there. And so he is the main character of Ninth Configuration. And essentially he's in an asylum in Vietnam where these people are, from what they believe, are faking being crazy to get out of the Vietnam War. They're all Americans. Then they have a person come in and who's played by Stacey Keach and try to like figure out what's going on, or if these people are actually insane, or if they're just trying to get out of war. Okay. Very good movie. It's he directed this in 1980. So this is just I think this was before Exorcist 2 came out, because he will not have any involvement in Exorcist 2. But what he will have involvement with is Exorcist 3, which he did not want to call Exorcist 3 because he had nothing to do with Exorcist 2 and it's not a sequel. He wanted to make this film with Exorcist 3. He originally wanted Friedkin to make it. Him and Friedkin disagreed with the film. So he makes that 10 years later in 1990. And they are the only two films he made. And I think they are both very excellent and very much worth watching. The reason I was going to bring up Scream Factory is because, sadly, the only Blu-ray that's been put out for ninth configuration in the US is from Scream Factory, which they limited to 1,500 copies. So thanks for that. Appreciate it. But yes, that will be what we have for next week. I'll have a bunch of stuff about it. I'm going to try to read. Well, when are we coming back? It's going to be like a month before anybody hears this. You have plenty of time if people want to watch these.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to be taking a bit of an extended break from our normal recordings because I'm getting married in 2 weeks and I'll be on honeymoon. So thank you. So there won't be an episode in this vein for a few weeks, but we do have some other stuff. So you don't need to worry. You'll still hear from us in some capacity. We're not going on a break per se. It'll just be a couple of weeks before we are talking again and we get to explore the Exorcist cinematic universe, which I'm looking forward to. So that sounds good.
How Groucho is the reason it exists.
Okay.
Ooh, all right. Good teaser. Well, thanks, y'all. And Adam, if we don't talk to you before your wedding, many happy returns.
Many thanks. Hopefully she shows up.
Just a prank.